Hello everyone and welcome back to Painting with Martin. Today we're going to paint the Sdkf Z250 Halftrack from Warlord Games Bolt Action series. And this one in particular looks like this from the box art. We're going to try to keep as close to the box art with some modifications. And this is what it looks like when I've also primed it in some German Panzergrey from Vallejo, as well as added a thin coat of Mechanicus standard grey for the first layer to speed things up, because it's a fairly heavy model to paint. Now, this particular model was gifted to me by Warlord Games at Essen Spiel last year. I'm very grateful for them for giving me this one, so I can show you guys how to paint it. I've actually mounted this one on a painting handle from Redgrass Games, Redgrass Creatives, so it's easier to handle, and that's what I'm going to use it. And if it falls off, I'll reattach it. Now, before we get started, I do want to say that I mounted this one with the option of that you had three kinds of options. You had to put a Pak 37 on it, which is an anti-tank gun, or you could put a radio mast and add Field Marshal Rommel on it, or you can just have it as a regular half-track, which I opted to do. It comes with a guy here with a machine gunner looking like this, and you're going to mount him afterwards so he stands, let's see if I can figure it out, like this. And so this is how it's going to look like when it's all finished. So now I'm going to deattach him and place him here to the side, because while this one dries, I'm going to focus on the gunner. So as I said, prime this model first with Panzergrey from Vallejo, and then apply a thin coat of Mechanicus standard grey from Citadel. And this is the reason I did that is because I'm opting for an early war look. These ones on the box are from the Africa Corps campaign, but you have the option to paint them early war as well, which is what I tried to find, which is what I found most appealing. That's what I want to say. So without further ado, we're going to start by actually shading this model using Nuln oil or black shade from Vallejo. But before we do that, we're going to add a thin coat of dry brushing on the MG42 here, because that's going to need anyways some Nuln oil on it anyway. So I'm using gunmetal grey from Vallejo for this one. You can use any kind of silver if you want to, but try to make sure that it's fairly oily, and just a small dot over here, and it's fairly enough. And that means we're going to use a small dry brush, and we're going to paint it to make sure. Now, it can be a little bit tricky. I've snapped off a few MG42s in my days, so just make sure it's very, very fiddly. So I'm going to put my finger over here to make sure that I stabilize it, just for the gun barrel. It would be very unfortunate if it snapped off. I wouldn't want that. And I'll turn it around to the other side here, and I'll do the same thing. That's a good technique to make sure that if you have a very, very brittle stuff, you can actually apply it without snapping things. You learn from your mistakes. So with this one done, I'm also going to do this one for the gunner, and do the same thing for the gunner here, and using it on the ammo mag as well. And something like this. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now, with this one done, time to apply some Nuln oil. You apply it neat over the entire model, and it's going to take some time to dry, which is why we're going to focus on the gunner instead. So Nuln oil it is from Citadel, in this case, neat. You can also use black wash from Vallejo. It's perfectly fine, whatever you find more convenient. I use a fairly large, and it's important to use a flat coated brush for this one, and I'll explain to you why. And you soak it in Nuln oil, and that means you're going to apply it in one single go across the model, letting it soak in the recesses and not on the surface areas. One go like this, on top, like this. And of course, in order to reach the areas, maybe you'll have to angle the brush as well as you see fit, but I think you get the idea. And it also helps with the drying time if it doesn't pool too much on the surfaces. And if you feel that it does, like for example it does pooled over here, you just move it around with the brush as I do now, and like this, to make sure that it pulls inside these like petrol cans. That's where you want it to pull. And don't forget the little thing here. Now these ones don't come pre-assembled. You're going to have to assemble them yourselves using a guide. And for more information like this, you can look at my unboxings and tips and tricks for the M3 Stuart, as well as the EZ8 Sherman. So make sure you also paint the interiors here. It's also neat, as well as of course the MG42, as we covered before. It can be a little bit tricky to get things done here in the interiors, but it doesn't have to be perfect, because we're mostly going to look at the exterior of the model. So with this one is done, we're going to leave, don't forget the inside of the gun shield here. Now, and some other things that you might have missed. So something like this. It's looking fairly nice already, and it's a really nice model to paint, I have to say. And I'm going to look at like this. Let's see here if I can adjust the lighting here a little bit. I do have an issue with lighting, but if I do it like this, you can actually see what I'm painting. So in this case, I'm going to remove this one for a second, so I'll have more space for my stuff. I'm going to put it out over here to the side. You can still see it, and I'm of course cleaning my brush. It's important that you do so after every time you use it, to make sure, especially if you're going to switch to another kind of paint. Now, as this one is drying, I'm going to take this one off the model. See if I can deattach it. Yes. As you can see, some of the putty here actually got stuck to it. It's a little bit annoying. Didn't expect that. I'm going to have to deal with the putty here in a bit. So again, note to self, when painting tracks, don't put putty on the tracks. It's going to stick, and I'm going to have to deal with this one later. So in this case, I'm putting on the, I'm going to deattach this one, and I'm going to attach a smaller cap. In this case, it's going to be easier to hold it. So deattaching it like this, and I'm going to apply some more putty from Warlord Games. Doesn't have to be much. Looking like this, and then I apply the miniature. Hopefully it will be a little bit stable. So we'll see. Can it move? No, it's fine. So what we're going to do first, well, of course we're going to close the jar of Nuln so it doesn't spill everywhere. It's going to be annoying. I've done it a number of times, and it's equally annoying every single time. Now, for the gunner here, I'm going for an early look, and that means I'm going to paint his tunic all the way. That's what you see over here. Not the trousers, and not the boots, with some German Fieldgrey World War II from Vallejo. So apply it neat. You can apply it with a thin layer if you like. Doesn't have to be much, because it's a fairly small model. These models are, what should I say? It's based on 32 156 scale, or I think it's 32mm scale. So it means that it's not 15mm, which I painted before, which means you can actually see what you actually, in this one you can actually see what you're actually painting. So with this one I'm using a size 2 brush, and I'm taking care not to touch the belts as well as his accessories here, which is the canteen. But if you do, not a problem. We'll be able to fix it later on as we go along. As here I touched the trousers here, which is annoying. And around like this. Don't forget you have to touch the upper tunic as well. Can be a bit fiddly to get to, but if you've got a painting handle like this, it shouldn't be much of a problem, and with some practice you'll get the hang of it. and going around, already looking much better. And angling it right. I really like this painting handle from Warlord Games. It really makes it much easier to paint, and I'm really happy I backed their Kickstarter. So something like this. Don't forget the other sleeve. And having nice painted miniature really helps the figure stand out. And I also taken care not to paint his upper collar here. That's going to be in a different color, just to differentiate him from other units. But if he is an NCO, which I assume he is, you can paint his cap with this one as well. And I assume that he belongs to the regular German army, the Wehrmacht, as the other no insignias for it to show otherwise. Don't forget the top and the front, as well as the brim of the field cap, as well as also the underside underneath here. There we go. So moving on, for the boots and for the belt, we're going to use some black. But before we get there, actually want to apply some for his tunic, not his tunic, but his trousers. That's what I wanted to say. For trousers, I'm using Mechanicus standard grey for this one from Citadel, but you should actually be using, because I don't have the colour, some dunkel grey or dark grey from either AK Warpaints or from Vallejo. But since I don't have this one, it's quite a nice replacement. And moving it around. And it's a nice contrasting from the otherwise very, I would say, German-looking Fieldgrey, and it is fairly German-looking. German uniforms, that is. Okay, this one done. I'm going to turn our attention to the face. Since the face was primed in a kind of like greyish tone, you can apply it either, if you want to use a contrast colour, you're going to have to apply some cold white or some white in general to lighten the face, which is where we are going to do it, to make sure it stands out a little bit more. And we can also apply this one to his hands and fingers. And this is a good idea not to get these things on top of the other colours. But if you do, you know exactly where you've gone wrong and you can correct it later on. Use it for the fingers. The reason why we're basing it in white now is if we're going to apply a skin color tone, we need something to base it on, and it's not very good to use a dark grey or something like that we have primed the miniature with. As you can see here, it looks fairly odd to have all this white here, but we are going to touch it up in a bit. Alright, looking like this. See if I can zoom in here for you guys. Like this. I'll zoom out. If you think that I should zoom in more with my painting, please do so. Please tell me in the comments. Otherwise, we are going to go to his collar, and his collar I'm going to use some German Luftwaffe Camo green. You can also use some German Camo dark green for this one, just to make sure it differentiates the rest of the model from the otherwise very greyish look. And this is just a small detail that I think makes the figure stands out a little bit more. And if you've touched over it with some white before, as I did here, we can actually touch it over with some green immediately. It's a nice way of correcting things. Also knowing exactly where the borders of the facial details are. Alright, so that one done. Going to turn our attention to the boots. But before that, we have some more touching up to go before we apply the next layer. I saw here that we forgot to apply some German field grey here to this part of the miniature. And now is also a good time to actually touch things up. Now we are going to apply the boots, as I said. So we're using some pure black from Vallejo in this one, like this one. You can also use glossy black alternatively from Vallejo if you want a more shining look. But since he will actually be in the half-track, these boots are not really going to be visible that much. So if you make mistakes here, don't worry, they're not really going to be visible that much on the field of battle. If you're playing Bolt Action, which is a war game from Warlord Games, putting one player against the other, usually a two-player game, using dice and rulers, and both infantry, tanks and artillery, as well as other units. The Sdkf said 250, or options to take 250/1, /3 or /10 variants, is going to make a good addition to both your transport capabilities as well as your recon capabilities for your German armies. And as we're going for the early war look here, this was one of the very highly priced belonging to the motorized regiments of the German army, sweeping across Europe in the early days of World War II. Now, with the history lesson gone here, I'm also going to apply the black to the belt here. Middle belt section, going behind as well. Like this, looking quite okay. We've got some ammo pouches and some the water canteen here before we apply the face, but I'm going to leave the face to dry a little bit more before we continue with this one. So we're going to apply for the canteen here. I'm going to use some from Vallejo, some chocolate brown, giving it a good shake. And it's going to really contrast well with the other parts of the miniature. Alright, we've got the facial details and the hands, as well as the ammo pouches here, which I think what they are. They could also be general pouches in which you can paint them German field grey. But for the ammo pouches, you've got two options. Either you can paint them black, you can paint them brown as we did with the canteen, or you can go for something like of a more yellowish colour, like an ochre colour. And I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to go for, but I'm going to see what I have. and see what might work quite well. The best one will most likely be what I have here is what's called Tau Light Ochre from Citadel, but something equivalent from Vallejo would be a good option as well. Give it a good shake here and see if it happens. Middlestone might work well with Citadel, or khaki. Let's see here if I can have this one. Let's see if I can have khaki instead. In this case it would be khaki grey. That's actually going to be a better option for me. I looked at it, it's going to be, when looking at models from online, that's most likely where I draw my inspiration from. If I don't know things, I look online and I do my research. So small hit of this one, doesn't require much, it's only about 2-3 pouches. Putting this one out to the side. So khaki grey from Vallejo would be good for these ones. Not much paint on your bristles, and also going to make them stand out a little bit more. And there's another small pouch over here to the side. All right, as you can see here, we'll see if this one's coming along quite well, fairly well, a little bit, it's not entirely dry yet. So we're going to continue working on the infantry model, and for the infantry model we are now looking at the facial details as well as the gun. So let's look at the facial details first. I'm putting this one to a side. I'm going to use some flat flesh from Vallejo for his facial details. Oh, got stuck here. I'll just take it out as piece by piece. And we'll start with the face. And of course the ears. Turn around to the other side. See if I can zoom in here. You can see the facial details better. You want to make sure also you cover the fingers. As well as the other hand on top of the machine gun. With this color. Moving the paint around to make sure there's nothing white here on from the previous before. As you can see here, it really brings out the figure. And see here, up here, turn it around for you so you can see. Now I'm going to zoom out here for you guys. See, that was zooming in like this. Now we've got the stock of the MG42 here. We've also got the canteen holder here. For the canteen holder, we're going to simply, not canteen holder, but canteen cap, we're going to apply some gunmetal for it. We can also use this one for the belt buckle. And any details of the MG42 that weren't entirely covered by the dry brush, such as the sights and other details that are not too much metal. Alright, now we are going to go for the stock of the machine gun. Putting this one down, and for this one I'm opting, see if I have the color. for some flat earth from Citadel, from Vallejo. It's a very funny colour. Must be flat earth. Is definitely most favourite colour of the whole range. And a small joke there. That's for the stock of the machine gun here. I'm quite pleased with this so far. Something like this, don't forget the top part. Looks quite okay. I'm going to leave this one to dry a few minutes, and I'm going to deattach this one here and leave this one over here. I see putty still goes off, that's a bit annoying. I'm also going to go back here to the main half-track, because while I'm still using flat earth, I'm going to use the same colour for the machine gun stock here too. You could alternatively use it as black, but in the early war they were made of wood. Later on in the war, they used a small, they used something called bakelite, which is an early form of plastic, and even though wood was always available. And inside here you also have some spare guns and some spare tools. We're also going to apply this one, same here, this model here for the paint the tool handles here. So we have this one here for the spade here. We'll turn this around and see there's nothing here. Is there something here as well? Yes, there's a small handle here too. Don't want to miss. While it's already here, you can do this later on as well if you like. Now this one is fairly dry, but in the meantime, I wanted to dry entirely before we apply the dry brush on the model. And what we're going to do first is we're going to apply the colour for the tracks. For the tracks, I'm going to use something called Rhinox hide from Citadel. You could paint them alternatively black, but if you're going for this colour and you want to use a Vallejo paint range, you should go for burnt umber. Burnt umber for that one. And I'm going to use a fairly larger brush for this one. I'm going to use a size 4 brush and apply it neat. It tends to be fairly hard on the brush, so you apply it in a stickling motion like this. And I'm not applying it here on the paint handle, I'm holding it here on my own here. I'm going to see if I can put it out here for you. That horrible putty that got stuck there got annoying. Oh, I'm going to have to deal with this later. Hopefully you'll be able to see here. I'll turn it over here a little bit so I won't go off camera. And that's going to contrast well with the rest of the miniature, which is fairly dark. We will lighten in a few minutes. First of all, a big thank you to all of you who have subscribed to the channel, Angling It Here. Thank you very much. It really helps me grow. A couple of likes per video really helps for the Google algorithm as well, showing other people what to look for, what they see when they look for painting these kind of miniatures. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please consider doing so. It really helps me grow, and every time I get a message, someone subscribed, like I got this morning, it really makes me happy, and that would be great. So as you can see here, the tracks are quite nice, and the reason why I'm painting them now is I'm going to dry brush some metal over them, or partially, later on, so I wanted to dry fully before we do that. And this half track can be seen in pretty much, in many World War II movies and TV series, anything from Saving Private Ryan to Band of Brothers. It's one of these iconic vehicles that were used all over the war in pretty much every theatre, and it provided much needed support and logistical capabilities to the German army when it was needed. So this looks quite okay. I'm going to clean my brush. Road wheels, I'm going to paint them black in a bit, but this one looks fairly okay now when it comes to, I'm going to leave it and dry in a few seconds, but I'm going to come back to this one again because I do actually want to apply some wash to this one for the face, and that means I'm going to apply wash for Reichland Flesh Shade, giving it a good shake from Citadel. And the reason why I'm doing that is that I want to have his face to be a little bit dulled. And to have a better facial features. It isn't detail that I find to be optional, but you can use it if you want to, and it really makes the facial details stand out. Alright. Then I'm also going to apply a small coat of Nuln oil to the tunic as well as the pants. Also optional, but I really like turning attention to the figure that is on top here. Hopefully you'll be able to see this, as well as all the metal parts here to dull them a little bit to make sure that they don't stand out too much. Also using it for the pants. And making sure that all those folds are coming out nicely. Alright, leaving this one to dry as we did with the Hanomag. Actually, the Hanomag is the Hollywood name for the half-track. Sometimes they use it as well. I just prefer the term half-track. It's dried fairly well. I think we can even put it down and see if it actually... Yeah, it does. So that's great. So now it's time for the main stage of this model. I'm not going to use this Broncos, the tracks in particular, otherwise in most models it works great. So I'm going to hold it up. But I'm going to use a dry brush right now. And for the dry brush, you can use something like Administratum grey from Citadel. It gives a kind of bluish hue to the tone, and you're going to dry brush the entire model with it. So I'm using a particular dry brush from this one. You can use also a makeup brush for this one if you don't have one, or a flat coated brush that will be fine as well. So I'm going to use it over, making sure that you have everything. So I'm going to dry brushing it over the edges now first of all. Yep. Going over like this. You can't really go too much on it, but it really brings out the model. All the edges are now getting visible. Don't forget the front. And turn it around. Make sure you don't dry brush these ones off. I've done that too. They're really annoying when it happens, and they're very fiddly to apply with some super glue. So don't do that. Here is a little bit too much maybe, but also it's the front of the miniature, so it doesn't really matter that much. So putting this one down and applying some more paint. A bit off camera that I'm using, taking it off the brush, taking the paint off the brush. And if you got a bit too much, make sure that you highlight the edges first. That's where you can take off the paint if you've got too much on it, like I did here. Also dry brushing the inner sides. You can also bring out the driver's seats quite well. And of course this side here and the undercarriage you can also do. Not needed, but you can if you want to, as well as the hatch here or this plate here at the back. As you can see right now, I'm fairly pleased with it. It's looking quite neat and nice, and also it has an option to have it quite dusty and withered. I like that very much. We're going to go over some nice details now, and what we're going to do is we're going to apply metal to all the tools and handles, actually mostly the tools. So you can see here you have some tools over here, some wrenches, a spade that needs to be covered, as well. Also these little flags or whatever you want to call them. Here there is another tool here that really benefits from the metal color. And going around, you can also paint the inner spare gun here with this color. I think it's a rifle, as well as the spare machine gun barrels. Looking quite nice. And now when I saw it as well, I'm going to apply it for the stock of the rifle here. Hopefully it's this one here, I hope. As well as the handle here for the pistol handle of the MG42. Turning around, making sure you got that as well on the other side. And after this is a good idea to actually apply your decals. They come a few of them. I'm not going to do it now. There's a video for that. I'm particularly terrible at applying decals, especially small ones. So I'm not going to make you laugh again with it. Here I also see that the gun, this one here is a little bit too dull. Fixing it here, making sure the gun, the gun shield here is up to speed. So, and also a little bit here as well. This one here is quite nice. And now we're going to apply a final detail of white to the lamps, the headlights here, can be very tricky to get to, but it's quite nice if you manage to go for it. Like this. Got a little bit too much here. So in this case, if you got too much, you can apply some Mechanicus standard grey when it's dried and simply apply it over. It looks quite nice when you've done it. Now we're going to turn our attention to the guy here. Now the guy here is quite nice. We're going to apply some additional flat flesh on for his face. And the reason why we do this is we want to highlight his face, making sure it really stands out a little bit more. And that's why we want to apply it to the nose, cheekbones, and chin, as well as the individual fingers, as well as on top here. Now when this one is done, we're going to do a reapplication of the German Fieldgrey World War II. But this one we're going to cover mistakes we made. And we're going to cover making sure the recesses are not touched, simply because we want to make sure the fold looks nice and neat from the wash that we did before. These are, of course, entirely optional stages, but I think it really brings out the miniature nicely. We can also do a real application of the heavy khaki. Touching only the pockets, leaving the shadows in between. And of course the Mechanicus standard grey for the pants, or trousers if you're English, leaving the shadow in the folds and recesses. Go to the other side. Looking quite okay. I do want to touch up the figure when it comes to the boots, because they stood on the putty. Making sure his boots are spotless and ready for action. There we go, the infantry figure. We'll see here if I can bring it up to speed here. Oh, it fell around. Looking quite okay. And now all we have to do is, of course, fix the mistake that we did with the lights, because I don't like when it looks horrible. Do like this and like this. They look quite okay now. We do actually have the tracks a little bit left, which I forgot. For the tracks and the road wheels, I'm going to use some German grey, and that's inside the road wheels. But the main figure here is done, which is nice. I like that. I'm going to put this one up here, and for the road wheels, for these ones, that's what I mean. It can be quite tricky to get the hang of it, but with some practice you'll you're getting quite good at this. And we're also going to use this one here for the road wheels here. Turning it around. You can use black for these ones as well, but I prefer German grey because it doesn't bring too much darkness out. And turn it around to make sure that you get the other wheels inside here. Try to paint it with one motion if you can. It really makes it easier. Alright, doesn't show that much to be honest, but that's okay. Now for our final dry brush, we're going to dry brush the tracks here. On the tracks we're going to be dry brushing with some gunmetal grey from Vallejo. Same thing as we did with the MG44. Putting it on top of here because I have no space in the palette. My bad organizational skills. Should ask me, I'm a teacher, so I'm pretty terrible at that. A light dry brush over the tracks like this will make them stand out further. Alright, and let's see if we can do a little bit underneath here. And there you go, we have the Hammerbeck Halftrack done. What we need now is to glue this figure in here. Just going to attach him here. And this is what it looks like. The German Halftrack is done, ready to be firing here with his MG42. And this is what he's wobbling around here a little bit because I didn't attach him. Let's see here if I can get a piece of white paper here before collapsing everything. So you can get a good idea because it's fairly dark here. So this is what the track looks like. Let's see if I can turn it up here for you so you can see it. Should have done this before, of course. So let's zoom in here for you guys so you can see. So that's the German Halftrack 250 from Warlord Games. Thank you very much, Warlord Games, for giving me this model. And thank you everyone that watched so far. And thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time. And then it will be something different. And thank you again for all of you who subscribe to the channel.